Okay, so picture this, right? You're at a concert, huge crowd, music's loud,
Oh, I can hear it now.
right? Everyone's having a good time, and then suddenly someone just collapses.
Scary, and it happens more than you think.
Yeah, and in that moment, knowing what to do, like really knowing basic life support, that could be the difference, literally.
Absolutely, no question. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive, right? To give people those tools, that confidence.
Exactly, because let's be real, reading a first aid manual, it's not exactly like edge of your seat exciting.
No, not at all. But what is interesting is how even those complicated medical things, they often boil down to simple steps.
Right, which brings us to our first big one, the PAS guideline. It's like your emergency checklist. Protect, alert, assist.
Love it. So simple. But each of those words, it's loaded.
For sure, especially when you're in a high-pressure situation. Every second counts. So let's start with protect. What's the top priority there?
Honestly, the thing people forget most, it's about protecting yourself first. It's natural to want to just rush in, but
Yeah, you can't help if you become a victim yourself, right?
exactly. So you got to look around, think about the surroundings. Are you on a busy road? Is there fire, power lines down, even broken glass?
Stuff you might not notice at first glance.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's say it is safe to approach. Now we're on to alert. And that usually means making that call.
The big one, calling for help.
Right, 911, whatever your emergency number is.
Yeah.
But it's not just about dialing, right? What you say matters.
Huge. You've got to be clear, direct, tell them where you are, what's happened, how many people, what kind of injury.
And any specifics too, right? Like if there are kids there or there's something dangerous nearby that the responder should know about.
100%. That operator, they're your lifeline, so more info is better, always.
And then finally, there's assist, which I think people assume means jumping straight into CPR, but it's broader than that, yeah.
Way broader.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is just be there. Reassurance, a calm voice, that can make a huge difference to someone who's scared or hurt.
Right, that human connection, you can't underestimate it.
And this is huge GE. Unless they're in immediate danger, don't move them. You could make things worse.
Right, better to let the professionals handle that.
Exactly. Now, once you've called for help, you're with the victim. How do you even know what kind of help they need? We'll get into that more next time.
This is good stuff. But for now, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we'll dive even deeper.
So you're with the victim. First things first. Are they conscious?
Seems obvious, but in the heat of the moment.
Oh, totally. So you talk to them, ask if they're okay. Even just a little groan means they're conscious.
Right, some kind of response.
Now, if they don't react, you can try gently shaking their shoulders, see if they wake up.
And if they're still unresponsive, that's when we need to check if they're breathing.
Exactly. And this is key. You check for no more than 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Why is that so specific?
It's all about focus. Those 10 seconds, you're looking for their chest to rise and fall, feeling for breath, listening.
Got it. So it's not just a quick glance. It's those few seconds,
Yeah.
really paying attention.
Exactly. Now, let's say they are breathing, but still unconscious. What do? You got to get them into the recovery position.
Right, which sounds more complicated than it is, but basically it's about rolling them onto their side.
Yeah, and there's specific ways to do it to protect their spine, but the main goal is to keep their airway clear.
Because if they're flat on their back, they could choke, even on their own tongue, right?
Exactly. Okay, now for the more intense scenario.
You're talking about if they're not breathing.
Yeah, that's when things get serious. First, make absolutely sure you've called 911, and then it's time for CPR.
CPR. I think a lot of people hear that and they freeze up.
I get it. It sounds intimidating. But really, it's about breaking it down into manageable steps.
So walk us through it. What's step one?
Okay, so CPR has two main parts, chest compressions and giving breaths. Let's start with the compressions.
Okay, so we're essentially like manually helping their heart pump blood.
Right, exactly. So you put the heel of one hand right in the center of their chest, between the nipples, and your other hand goes on top.
Okay, got it. And then you're pushing down.
Right, but it's not just about arm strength. You want to use your body weight, keep your arms straight, elbows locked.
And how hard do you push? Is there specific depth?
Good question. Yeah, you're aiming for about like 3.5 to 5 centimeters deep for an adult.
Wow, okay. And you have to do this at a certain speed too, right?
Yeah, the target is about 100 compressions per minute. It's faster than you might think.
100 compressions a minute. How do you even keep track of that?
You know the song Staying Alive? It's got that perfect rhythm.
Oh, wow. That's actually really helpful. So I'm doing compressions, thinking of EEGs. What's next?
Right, so after 30 compressions, you give 2 breaths.
This is where I think people get a little squeamish.
It can feel weird, yeah, but it's crucial. So you tilt their head back gently by putting one hand on their forehead, the other under their chin.
To open up the airway.
Exactly. Pinch their nose closed, seal your lips over their mouth, and give a breath about 1 second long, watching for their chest to rise.
Okay, so 30 compressions, 2 breaths, and you just keep repeating that.
Until help arrives, yes. And listen, even if you can only remember the compressions, that's still better than nothing.
Right. Doing something is always better than freezing up and doing nothing.
Exactly. Now, obviously, CPR for kids is a bit different.
Yeah, their little bodies are way more fragile. You wouldn't do those full-on compressions on a baby, right?
Right, you gotta adjust. For infants, you use 2 fingers instead of your whole hand, and much gentler compressions.
Makes sense. And for bigger kids.
You might use 1 hand or 2, depending on their size, but the principle's the same. Keep that blood flowing. Okay, so we've covered a lot, but we have to talk about choking. It's so common.
Choking. It can happen so easily. A piece of food, something small, and suddenly someone's.
Yeah, and it can escalate really quickly, which is why it's so important to know what to do.
Exactly. So let's break it down. How can you tell if someone's choking and like how serious it is?
Well, the first thing to look for is whether it's a partial obstruction or a complete one.
Okay, so partial meaning like they're still getting some air.
Right? They might be coughing hard, maybe even able to speak a little between coughs. The key is their body is still trying to fix it.
So if they're coughing, that's actually a good sign. Right.
To a point, yeah. If they're coughing forcefully, the best thing to do is actually encourage them to keep coughing.
Really?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to like pat them on the back or something.
It's tempting, but honestly, their own cough is way more effective at dislodging whatever's stuck.
Interesting. But what if it's a complete obstruction, like zero air is getting through?
That's when you got to act fast. They won't be able to breathe, talk, cough. They might even be grabbing at their throat. That's a clear sign.
Okay, that's terrifying. So what do you do in that situation?
First, call 911 immediately. Then get behind them, support their chest with one hand, and with the heel of your other hand, you give 5 sharp blows between the shoulder blades.
Those are the back blows, right?
Exactly. You're trying to create enough force to dislodge the object.
And if that doesn't work?
If you've done 5 back blows and it's still not dislodged, then you move on to abdominal thrusts, what some people call the Heimlich maneuver.
That one seems a bit more, I don't know, intense.
It does take some force, yeah.
Oop.
So you're standing behind them, you make a fist with one hand, thumb side in, and you place it just above their belly button.
Okay, and then?
You grasp that fist with your other hand, and you thrust inward and upward, kind of like you're trying to lift them up.
And how many times do you do that?
You do up to 5 abdominal thrusts, checking after each one to see if the obstruction's clear. And again, if they become unconscious at any point, you need to lower them to the ground carefully and be ready to start CPR.
Wow, okay, that's a lot, but important stuff to know.
It really is. And just like with CPR, you gotta adjust your technique for infants and children.
Right, because their bodies are so much smaller and more fragile, you wouldn't do abdominal thrusts on a baby.
Definitely not. For babies under a year old, you do modified back blows and chest thrusts instead of abdominal thrusts.
So it's all about adapting to the situation, but that underlying knowledge, that's what can save a life.
Absolutely. And that's what I hope people take away from this deep dive. You don't have to be a doctor or a paramedic to make a difference. Knowing these basic skills, that's huge.
It really is empowering, right? Knowing that you could potentially save someone's life just by having this information.
Exactly. It's about turning that fear, that I don't know what to do feeling, into action. You can help. You can be that person.
So to everyone listening, learn these skills, practice them, because you never know when you might need them. And trust me, that knowledge, that confidence, it's priceless. Thanks for diving deep with us.